All right, welcome back everybody. Here we are going to start looking at our projects, but in this first project, it's going to be a little bit different than our future projects. Our future projects have a lot of code that's also involved. In this first part, we are simply going to be looking at the circuitry that we can build, and that's why we call this first project Get to Know Your Tools. Simply because we're going to be looking at the circuits themselves rather than how to program the Arduino board just for this first part. And again, this is aligned with the Arduino project book. So when we talk about this first chapter, really we're just using the Arduino to power our board and our circuit. And what we're going to be doing with this one is using the 5-volt output from the Arduino board to ultimately power our breadboard. In addition to that, we are going to be using the ground pin to complete our circuit. And here, again, we're just using the power in and out or the power out and the ground in on our Arduino board, again, just to look at circuitry. And what this is really going to look like is we take the power from our Arduino board and we're going to input that into our breadboard, and that's going to be the inner track that you'll see later on when we look at the circuits itself. And from there, we're going to use the output, which is the outer track, to go into the ground of the actual Arduino circuit board. And what that's going to allow us to do is have this inner track here provide positive power to our components that we put onto the breadboard, and it's going to allow this outer track to act as a ground for our entire circuit. In this first project's run through, pretty much all of them, I'm going to be using a 9-volt battery to power on the circuits. You can use a wall outlet that's spec'd out for the Arduino board, or you can have your computer plugged in. Really is entirely up to you. But I like to program it, flash the circuit, and then power it on with a 9-volt battery. That's how I'd probably deploy it into the real world. So that's the power source that I'm going to be using for these projects. And that about covers the intro part for this. What I want to do now is we're going to switch over and take a look at the actual circuits. And there's 4 of them in this first project that we're going to walk through. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. All right, everybody. This is the first circuit board that we have in our Arduino project book. And what we are doing with this in this first project or chapter, really we're not using the Arduino board for anything other than power out and a ground so we can complete the circuit. Everything that's over here on the breadboard for the entire project, all the boards that are in project 1 could be done just by feeding in power and allowing for a ground. But again, eventually we will be writing code for, blinking things and twirling things and turning lights on and off and everything else. But for now, we just have our first project, which is taking the input, and this inner track here is our input of power into the breadboard, and this outer track here is our ground. And so what we can see here is 5 volts coming in, and the first thing we're doing is hitting a resistor, which protects our LED from getting overpowered and pretty much blowing out on us. So the power comes in, hits the resistor. The resistor is coming into the anode of the LED, which is the longer leg, and you can see I kind of have it bent out, kind of like they do have it in the book. It's getting power. The power is coming up through the circuitry within the LED to light it up. Then the power is coming back out. It's hitting our ground, and again, this first track is our ground. This inner track is our power, hitting the ground, and then from this ground it's coming back out to our Arduino board. So we have a complete circuit. Pretty straightforward, about as straightforward as you're going to find for any circuit, really. But you can see how we are using our power input on this inner track to engage and interact with our electrical components, and then always completing the circuit out to the ground. So again, just a pretty complete circuit. Again, we're not using any code on this one. We won't get into code until our second chapter. For the next one, I'm going to add in some of the other components in here, switches, things like that, where we'll start seeing the series and parallel. So as soon as I get the next board set up, we'll see you back here in just a moment. All right, everybody. So this is the second circuit in project 1 of our Arduino project book. And once again, you can see there's just power in and power out. There's no code. And our power in is going to hit our resistor. Our resistor is going to carry our power input into this switch button. And if this switch is not pressed, that means the circuit is not complete. So there's no output or no power coming in on this line, and therefore there's no power coming into our LED. No need for ground in this particular case. We're not worried about it. And so in order to complete this circuit, we need to press this first button. And once we do that, we have the power that comes into the switch. We close the circuit, and that produces output, which hits this line, which comes into the input of our LED, lights it up, and then we complete the circuit out to our ground. Pretty cool. Okay, so in the next one, I will show the switches in series, which is the next board in project 1 of our Arduino project book. And we will see you just as soon as I get that board set up. All right, welcome back, everybody. What we are going to look at now is the next circuit from the first chapter in the project book. Again, we have no code on our circuit board. And all that we are doing is we're taking power in, it goes into our resistor, hits our first switch, and pretty much since this first switch is not closed, the power dies there. However, if we go ahead and complete the circuit with our first switch, we can see that nothing happens. And the reason is that it's coming out of the first switch because we complete the circuit, and we come into the second one. And since the second one is not pressed, then the circuit dies in here. Now if we press this one, this second switch, you can see still nothing happens, because obviously there's no power coming out of this first switch until it's pressed. So pressing the second switch by itself does nothing. And that's why regardless of which button we press, the LED does not light up. Because we are in series, meaning the entire circuit, one after the other, needs to be completed for the power to come from our input out to our ground. In this circuit, we need to press both buttons simultaneously so that the LED lights up. And here, the power would be coming into the first switch. We complete the circuit by pressing it. Power's coming out, coming into our second switch or button. And now that they're both engaged, we get the LED lighting up once again. We hit the anode, which is our input for power, and then we hit the ground. And that is the circuit for our series. What we're going to do next is a parallel circuit to see what happens when we press either or again, or what happens when we press both of them again. And I'll be right back as soon as I set that board up. All right, welcome back, everybody. Here we have the next circuit in the project book. We're still in chapter 1, project 1, and it's just, again, completing some of the examples for circuitry, right? We still don't have any code written. Nothing's changed there. Power out, ground in. Our power still coming into our resistor. And this time, you'll notice that there's a few more wires here, and I had to use a couple of different colors simply because of the length of the wires. But all that aside, what we can see here now is in this input, we have the input being carried into the first switch, as well as we have continuous input into our second switch. Additionally, you can see from this longer red wire, we now have a output from our first switch always able to go directly into our LED's input. And again, we just have the output to our ground from our LED. Now, when we look at the incoming power, we see that we have continuous power into our second switch, and we have our output coming directly into the input of our LED, which you should be able to see here a little bit better. So regardless, if we have this first switch completed, we will have output, or we'll have power on this red line, which feeds into the input or our anode of our LED to light it up. Or if we hit this second switch, we will have power into our LED again to light it up. So here in parallel, unlike before where if we only pressed one we wouldn't get any LED interaction, now regardless of which switch we actually press, or additionally, not that this matters at all in this circuit, but we can press them both simultaneously as well, or just one at a time, and either one will light up the LED because of the way that the power is continuously fed into both switches. So if either switch is depressed, the output will come into our LED regardless of which switch we actually hit. And so this is in parallel, meaning only one of the circuits within the switches needs to be complete for our LED to light up. Right, and again, if they both get lit up, or if they both get pressed, come on. If they both get pressed, it doesn't really matter. It just completes the circuit. So anyways, that is the final circuit for Project 1. And we will see you in the next lesson for Project 2, where we will start to look at the code as well as the circuitry. So everyone, I hope this was very informative for Project 1, but we look forward to seeing you in the next project section of videos.